Hello and welcome to another episode of Undercooled, where we talk about materials education. Today we have a very special guest, a very old friend of mine, one of my former students, Marcus Collins. Marcus was a student, I don't know, like 25 years ago, something like that. It's about right, Marcus. And I'll never forget running into Marcus at a diner right after he graduated. And I said, Marcus, how you doing? You know, what do you have a job? You know, are you doing something with material science? And he looked at me and he said, nah. He goes, that's what my parents wanted me to do. He goes, but what I really wanted to do was music. So I just built a recording studio and I'm producing bands and I love it. And I'm going, like, that's fantastic. And then about a year later, I ran into Marcus again. And I said, so how's that music studio going? And Marcus said, well, I wasn't really that good at producing bands, but I ended up being really good at marketing them. And it's ended up landing me in a really cool position. I said, oh, what are you doing? He goes, oh, well, I'm the international digital marketing manager for Beyonce. I'm like, oh my God, my mind was blown. And since then, he's done a lot more. So let's let Marcus fill us in on his career path and what he did with his material science and engineering degree. So Marcus, welcome.
Thanks so much for having me. That story is so very true. Quite true.
So what did you do after you were Beyonce's? How did that change your career?
You know, I've had these like inflection points throughout my career that seemingly seemed disparate, at least while I was going through it. But looking back in the rearview mirror, they connect in such meaningful ways that I think has made me a better practitioner every step along the way. So to your point, I studied materials originally in my undergraduate work, went into music, and then went into marketing. And really, marketing is where I found my footing. Because I think marketing at its core, you know, marketing is the act of going to market in an effort to get people to adopt behavior. And it requires knowing more than just sort of the business forces that are at play in the market. It's about understanding the market, that is, people. And marketing is really where sort of the convergence of my previous experiences, be it understanding how networks work, the physics of networks from a polymer's perspective, understanding sort of what it means to connect with people emotionally from a creative perspective as a musician, and then from a marketing perspective, understanding sort of the underlying physics of humanity that ultimately govern how we show up in the world and things that we do and things that we buy. Those pieces together, those seemingly disparate concepts together have made me such a better marketer today. So I've spent my time post Beyonce helping brands navigate the hyper connected world in which we live. And today, I not only do that for brands, but I help other future marketers do that for brands as well as a professor here at the Ross School of Business, University of Michigan. And I get to go on stages and talk, and I get to go on television and talk. And I wrote a book, and all these different sort of outlets to do the thing that I feel like I do best, which is help people be the best versions of themselves.
That's fantastic. And of course, Marcus is very, very humble. He ended up he ended up getting his MBA. Then he went and got a PhD in marketing, and now he's a professor at the Ross School of Business. And he just wrote this amazing book called For the Culture, which I have read. And you might be wondering, why is Marcus on the show about materials education? And let me tell you that we, as a community of materials educators, face one of the most daunting problems that's been an issue for over 60, 70 years. And that's nobody knows what material science is. And we have a lot of trouble getting undergrads to choose material science. So when I read Marcus's book, I actually heard Marcus talk about his book at a local restaurant at Zingerman's. It was great. And when I read his book, I started to realize, oh my goodness, this might be the magic fix to help us understand who our market is and how we can, by understanding the culture of potential material science undergrads, we might be able to reach them and communicate to them what an awesome field material science is.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why we invited Marcus to help us with this problem. But of course, then Marcus sent me an email the other days, and I'll let Marcus tell you, he teaches in marketing department at Ross, and they have a similar problem. So Marcus, maybe you can talk about that.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it is a really good brief for us to have this discussion because I think that what MSc is experiencing, what marketing is experiencing, is a lot of what the humanities are experiencing in education. The same thing that some products are experiencing in the marketplace. It's the same thing that every entity, organization, institution, brand, product, artist, you fill in the blank with whatever noun you want, that everyone experiences when there is expansion and then contraction because of the dynamics in the market. And everything's the market, right? Like wherever there's people, there is a market. So we have to ask ourselves what's going on in the market and why we're experiencing a contraction and what might we do to subvert those forces such that those contractions become expansions. So let's get into it. Where should we start?
Absolutely. And in fact, I should also mention last year, Marcus was our alumni award winner for our department, and he came and gave an amazing talk. He showed his advertisements that he developed for the Super Bowl ad for McDonald's. And he sent in just Marcus, understanding what people care about made McDonald's go from a very underperforming company to an incredibly performing company. And I'm sure they're calling them up now because their prices are killing them right now and they're in trouble again. So Marcus is the guy who started Grimace's birthday with the purple milkshakes and the little meals that celebrities had. So I'm hoping, Marcus, that we can talk about this today, sort of in the context of your book. So I've taken the liberty of trying to write down, the chapters of your book, the main themes of your book, and to see, can we use your book as a blueprint to solve our problems with attracting students?
Yeah.
So, your book says that, the tagline is the power behind what we buy, the power behind what we do, and the power behind what we want to be. So we know what we want to buy. We want people to buy an MSc degree.
Yeah.
And we know what we do. We want our students to practice MSc. Finding the power behind what we want to be is the hard part, I think. And
I would say it's worth actually unpacking each three of those things.
Okay.
Started with, so the question, what do we want people to buy? And I think on the surface, we say we want them to buy an MSE degree. That's what we want, right? But we have to ask ourselves, what do people want to buy? And when I think about like the motivations for consumption, I think about it through the lens of a gentleman named Clay Christensen. He's a scholar who's since passed, but he actually introduced the idea of disruption to the marketing literature. And he talked about disruption really is about, again, subverting, contorting the orthodoxy. And he says this really interesting, just such a beautiful provocation. He says that people don't buy brands and branded products, they hire solutions that get jobs done, right? And he would call this thing the jobs to be done, that people buy things based on the jobs to be done. Well, what's the jobs to be done? The idea of jobs to be done is that there are three bespoke but interconnected jobs. There is the functional job, the emotional job, and the social job. The functional job is the actual task at hand. So in the context of academia and in MSc more specifically, when students go to school, there's a functional job. I want to learn something, right? Or maybe I want to get a job after this, right? Like, but that's the job to be done. I want employment after this, or I want to learn something. Hopefully, the two together. That's the functional job. That's the easy part. They choose the school that has the highest rating or have the highest probability of me getting a job from it. Very, very functional. But then there's an emotional job, and that's about how I want to feel when I do the thing. And you think about this when students visit a campus, they go, "Oh, I feel like I could go to school here. I feel like I belong here. I feel like my people are here." So if the school ranks high and there's a high probability of getting a job, and I feel a certain way about being here, the value of the school or its potential to operate against the jobs to be done is higher. The social job is how I'm seen by others. And that's a really powerful one, right? It's not just how I feel about it, but how do other people see me? If I go to this school, do people see me as being smart? Do people see me as being clever? Do people see me as being sort of higher class in the social hierarchy? All these associations, how am I seen in the eyes of people? And when a brand or branded product, in this case, a degree from the University of Michigan, College of Engineering, in the MSc program, if that provides the functional jobs or performs well against the functional jobs, performs well against the emotional and the social jobs, it is of higher value. Then the idea becomes, so if those things are there, then that's what the gospel that we go preach, if you will. So it's like, first, what do people buy? People don't buy your product. They don't buy your degree. They buy a job to be done, which is functionally, emotionally, and socially constituted. So that's the first thing, the job part. Now it's like, okay, so what do we want to do? Now we want people to enter the program. We want people to be high performing MSc students who graduate and go in the world and be great. That's what people to do. But the question is not what we want people to do, is what do people want to do? And this is really informed and influenced by that third job to be done, the social job. Right, we are, as Gabrielle Tard, a sociologist, would say, society is all imitation, and we are social animals by nature, as Aristotle would say. So we are constantly being influenced, pushed, prodded, not nudged, based on what is acceptable behavior for people like me, or said differently, based on my cultural subscription, based on how I self-identify. There are expectations for people who self-identify like me, or the many monikers that I use to self-identify. And therefore, to maintain good standing citizenship within those collectives, be it my family, my friends, my fraternity brothers, my teammates, my congregates, my sorority sisters, all these groups of people that we use to carve out our personhood in the social phenomenal world in which we live in, there are expectations with regards to what people like me ought to do, and therefore I do it. So it's not enough just to perform against the jobs to be done. There also needs to be social pressure to say that, hey, this is what people like me do. This is what people like me are expected to do. So we have to find a way to create these exogenous shocks to the system, these outside forces that at least has the perceived ubiquity of this is what people like us do. And then there's the third. So who do we want to be? What do we want to be? And that's what we aspire to be. That is the identity project that we strive to achieve in society. Right? Do I want to be seen as cool? Do I want to be seen as smart? Do I want to be seen as industrious? Do I want to be seen as an entrepreneur? Who do I want to be? And when people see me, what meaning do I want to carve out in their cognitions? And when we think about those three sort of levers, they become a really interesting frame by which we think about the problem that MSE is having. How well do we as a discipline, as a program, particularly as Michigan, but let's just say more broadly, material science, how well do we as an offering perform against those jobs to be done? How well do we create exogenous shocks to the system that creates this sense of concurrence, of perceived ubiquity that everyone's doing it? And like we've seen other disciplines in the sciences do this, like computer science, right? Or programming, electrical engineering. Like there is this sense that like, that is a good way to go. There's a sense of ubiquity. That's a cool thing to do. And then lastly, how well do we perform as an identity project for people? If it's a thing that people have to always explain what it is, not that great of an identity project, right? I've worked at companies before that anytime I'd said the name, go, huh? And I go, oh, it done, da, da, da. They go, oh, yeah, 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 yeah. But when I worked at Apple and said I worked at Apple, they go, oh, I know exactly what that is. I work at Beyonce, oh, I know exactly what that is. That is a really powerful shortcut as an identity project. So as we think about the marketing problem for MSC, those are the levers that we have to consider pulling as we arrive at some solution.
So maybe Tim can tell you a little bit about something our community's been doing for close to 50 years, the Teacher Camp project that the ASM Foundation has been running.
Right. And I want to try to run with the previous themes that Marcus just unpacked a little bit as we do this. So there's this ongoing project through ASM, which is one of the main professional societies in material science, where we every year there are a couple dozen camps around, mostly North America, a couple internationally, and high school teachers, middle school teachers in particular, come to these camps to learn material science to bring it back to their schools. And so I think a lot of the way this is thought about as a recruiting tool is as a force multiplier, right?
Yeah.
That I teach these 10 teachers who then go teach 1,000 students who then go and so on and so on. And logically, that seems to make sense. And we certainly do see on the like anecdotal level of students come in and they say, oh, I had a teacher who did the ASM camp and that's why I went into materials. And so we do have evidence that there's a non-zero impact, but it feels like the multiplication of the force is not really happening at the scale that we want it to.
Sure.
And thinking about that now from the perspective of what we buy, what we do, who we want to be, I wonder how we can learn about the perceived identities of these students, right, who are interacting with the teachers who went to the materials camps, and to say, can we understand what they want, what they are looking to buy, who they are trying to become, and to weave that more into the fabric of the camp so that they are resonating with those messages from their teachers, and then we actually get the multiplication we need.
Sure. Yeah, I wonder. So that brings two things to mind. Things about how I got introduced into materials engineering. So I didn't have a teacher who went to the camp. I actually learned about MSc through the Summer Engineering Academy at the University of Michigan. So every summer from my the summer before I went into high school as a freshman, every summer I spent on the campus of the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor for 4 weeks, sometimes 8 weeks, the entire summer, studying engineering concepts. And I got introduced to MSc. I think it was my sophomore year of high school, maybe my junior year of high school. There was an engineering fair, a career fair during the summer academy, and all these different engineers, different kinds of engineers, set up kind of booths and explained or demonstrated the work they did. You had some ceramics guys doing blowing glass, which was just amazing. And you go to each booth and you see, oh, that's interesting, that's cool, that's interesting. And I was like, oh, that's interesting, I like that, that's okay. And there's this guy from NASA who had a piece of a space shuttle, and he blew one side of it with a torch, and you had red body radiation. It was hot, like red hot, literally. And he said, put your hand on the other side of it. I was like, there's no way I'm doing that. And he goes, put your hand on the other side of it. I was like, are you crazy? I'm not doing that. And then he did it, and he said, do it. And I touched it like just at the top of my index finger. And I was like, it's cool. He was like, yeah. And I was like, how did you do that? He was like, well, that's what I do. I'm a materials engineer. And I was like, sign me up for that. I want to do that. That just seemed really, really cool. And from that moment on, I knew I was applying to University of Michigan. I knew I was going to go into MSc. In fact, it's the only school I applied for, aspired to for college. I knew exactly what I wanted to do because that experience was so transformative. It wasn't a rational decision, it was an emotional decision. And the truth of the matter is that we make most of our decisions from an emotional state. Like, we are emotional beings. We're not rational beings. We're rationalizing human beings. Because of how we feel, we then sort of post justify it with the rational arguments. So this idea of creating experiences that activates sort of this multiplier, this network effect, I think it's good, but it has to be more than rational. It has to be extremely emotional. And again, I didn't benefit from that, but something sort of similar to it, if you will. I think that so that's the first thing that comes to mind. The second thing that comes to mind is maybe we're fishing from too shallow of a pool. Maybe we're trying to get students who are already on an engineering track, who are already really invested in math and science, and saying that's the pool that we're pulling from. And maybe the gravitational forces among that pool is too heavy to combat with, right? Maybe, again, I think computer science, electrical engineering is so in demand because it's so heavy in the zeitgeist. AI. People want to, program games. People who want to, we live in a zeros and ones world. So, of course, with that being so forward facing, so salient in our day-to-day lives, people who go about that route could benefit from his jobs to be done. Clearly, I'm going to get a good job from it because it's such in high demand. Also, if I'm into it, I'm going to be emotionally stimulated, and socially, I look smart, I look cool, I look all the things, right? And when we think about the pool to which we fish from, maybe we can widen that pool. Maybe we need to change the pond in which we do our fishing so that we might be able to perform better against their jobs to be done.
So it's interesting you point that out because at University of Florida, Kevin Jones, who was the chair of their department, he got together with the Materials Research Society and wrote a NSF grant to create a course called The Impact of Materials on Society, which he co-taught with sociologists. And it doubled the size of their enrollment because they did exactly what you said. They went outside of their pond.
Yeah.
And so I've been trying to do the same thing here at Michigan with the archaeology department. So I teach a course over in the CCCB, the new building.
Yeah.
And it's called Making Things, 3 Million Years of Materials and Culture.
That's dope.
And it should work, but the registrar has been horrible. They didn't list our course last year. And so our target audience is freshmen. We want to get them as freshmen. So if somebody thinks they want to be a chemistry major or a physics major or a biology major, we can get material science up front. And the archaeology program has the same issue we have of getting students. So they're hoping they can get some history or other humanities areas to go to archaeology.
I love that.
Maybe we need to do that with marketing, have a marketing material science course where we come up with something really clever and help both of us by going after the freshmen.
That's
doing
right.
exactly what you said. But
I
again,
like that idea.
The stopping point for me is I hear everything you're saying, but how do we actually figure out what's going to excite them emotionally and for their identity? How do we figure that out? And I guess this is something you're expert at because this is all what market research is supposed to do, I presume.
That's right. That's right.
So how do we do that?
So the first thing I would start looking within. I always tell brands this. They're like, how do we go after the target and how do we best engage them? And I start with, well, you got to start with you. Like, who are you as a brand? Who are you as an entity, as a politician, as an organization, as a company? And how do you see the world? And I think when I think about MSc, again, for me as a once student who didn't practice as a professional, is that my frame for MSc was so myopic that I didn't see the application beyond a very narrow view. Right? I thought about it as ceramics, metallurgy, and polymers. And in my mind, polymers where you either work in packaging or you worked in automotive. Like it was just so narrow. And now, having lived a lot of years since then, you see materials and everything, especially when we live in a world that that is pushing against the orthodoxy of being online to making more tangible things, be it more tangible experiences. You see, companies like Etsy, like these things are about returning to the artisan, which to me creates a really interesting cultural counterpoint for a materials offering, right? So I talk a lot about cultural branding. Right? And the idea of cultural branding is that instead of focusing on the value propositions of the product, instead you focus on what's happening in the cultural zeitgeist, in the social zeitgeist, what's going on. And you find the conflict, you find the call it, say, the contradiction that exists. And then you say, as a brand, as an entity, as an organization, as an offering, as a program, we offer a counterpoint to that. And you become a symbol of that subversion, not just what you offer. So you can imagine, hey, in a world full of zeros and ones, we spend all our time online. There is this want for more experiences. There's this want for more tangible things. There's a want for that. And guess what those tangible things are made up of? Materials. And if we think about the things that people care about, sneakers, fashion, these are all people who work in these professions that become potential MS&E students. They're high school students who are massive sneakerheads, love sneakers. And we go, hey, you know how like that's made? It's through the way the leathers and the plastics come together. It's the processes by which they make sure that the soles stick the way they do. Like, all those things are material science engineering decisions that are made. So you could be a better designer, a better creator if you understood the mechanisms by which that happened. Now we have widened the pool beyond people who do well in math and science, people who want to be engineers. Now we're looking at people who care about fashion, who care about sneakers, which is a massive pool. Now, to your question, Steve, the idea then is to go find out who they are. And we enter into a research posture. Now, in the world of cultural branding, in the world of like really good marketing, we typically do ethnographic marketing research. That is, we immerse ourselves in the social and cultural contexts of the people, right? It's like going native. So if you want to know about cosplayers, you go to Comic-Con, right? If you want to know about NASCAR, you go to North Carolina and spend time with them. Like, you go spend time with the people and understand who they are, how they see the world, and how they collectively navigate through the world. So you can talk to them in their language, understanding all the nuances of who they are in such a way that when you engage them, they go, oh, you get it. You are like me. And therefore they feel connected to you. And when you offer who you are, you don't talk about what you are first. You talk about how you see the world. The offering that you provide becomes a way by which you resolve the tension. You go, yeah, like the sneakers are really important, and I want to be in the sneaker space, but I don't know if I want to major in fashion design. My parents are never going to let that happen. I want to, I love I'm a hype beast. I love the way, clothes look and feel and hang on your body. But like, I'm not going to FIT. I'm not going to Parsons. I'm not going to SCAD. There's no way my parents are going to pay for that. But they will let me go to the University of Michigan, College of Engineering, and I can still be close to this thing while also satisfying the social job to be done. When we position the offering like that through a different frame, now you're operating in completely different territory.
So there's something here that I need to go with for a minute, because I feel like we've gone halfway on what you're describing, but we haven't gone all the way. And there's a key here, which is that we do I feel like preach as a materials community. With materials, you can do anything because anything is made of materials. And like, that's true.
Yeah.
But we're not often engaging with individual people on that level of what do you love that isn't school? And how can I find that connection with that thing that you love, whether it's video games or sneakers or whatever it might be? How do you build that out of materials, and how does materials make you better at that thing that you love, you individually, as a real human being?
That's right. I mean, people weren't running to computer science because they loved programming. They loved video games. They loved the internet. They loved to make things that are made of zeros and ones. And this became a way by which you did that. Not only that, they had great cultural production helping them do that. You had, Spider-Man, who was into these things, and therefore you get the Mark Zuckerbergs of the world. You had all of these sort of cultural like lightning rods that added additional value to this particular career trajectory, and the alchemy of all those things help. So like the camp, like the content you're creating here, but even more so like what Bill Nye the Science Guy did for science. I mean, there are all these lightning rods that create exogenous shocks to the system that all together make people go, huh, I might want to do that. The same thing goes when we're selling sneakers for Nike. They see an ad on television. They see a billboard. They hear someone talking about it in social networking platforms. They see someone wearing it. They see someone talk about it. They hear it in a rap song, and they see it everywhere. And together, all those pieces together get people's attention to go, huh, I think I might want some Nikes. Not because of what the Nikes are, but because of who these people are and who they want to be.
It's funny you mentioned Nike because one of our seniors who just graduated, she's working at Nike, doing exactly what you're saying with different kinds of polymers and polyurethanes. And it's great. And we have other students who come back every year and recruit from General Mills because they do packaging. And
That's
so
right.
the whole food industry. So we have a lot of these things. The head of material science at Apple is one of our undergrads, right?
That's what I'm talking about.
And so we have a lot of these connections, but I don't think we do a very good job at all of commuting. Well, we can't go to Comic-Con and we can't go to a NASCAR event. I don't even know where we go to reach our potential audience because it's so spread out. It's in high schools all over. And we do send a lot of our graduate students to outreach to try to get kids interested in material science. But I think we're missing something. We need to work with all of these little groups that go out. We need to work with the teachers also, I think, and figure out how to engage them in helping us with our market research that none of us know how to do.
Yeah, so you can't go to Comic-Con, you can't go to NASCAR, but you can go to Reddit and you can go to TikTok because it's in these social spaces that people are doing what they do in real life. They crash into each other. They collectively negotiate and construct meaning. They enter the same discourse on TikTok that they would at at the bar or at the dinner table if they're students. The idea is that, and when we can't do an ethnography, like physically go out into the field, we can do a netnography, as Rob Cosmet has coined. A netnography is an online ethnography where we observe cultural practitioners practice their culture. Right? We watch them as they enter into the discourse of what it means to be a part of the community, and they align to the expectations of what it means to be one of them. And we can observe them in Reddit, which is like such a great platform to observe them because Reddit is a community of communities. And as a researcher, there are moderators on the subreddits in these communities that are ensuring that whatever's posted on the subreddit is aligned to the social facts of the community. So if you post things that are outside of what's acceptable, i.e. what is culturally expected for people like you, not only will your post get removed, you will get removed over time. So it's like you have someone cleaning the data for you. Like as a researcher, doesn't get better than this. So you can observe what sneakerheads talk about. You can observe what designers care about. You can observe what people who are obsessed with packaging talk about, right? And understand how they make meaning, which then informs how we, MSC, communicate ourselves to the world. And then, while we are tapping teachers to go evangelize the gospel of everything is made of materials, which makes a material education really makes everything is made of materials, which makes a materials education everything, right? So then you've got students who are currently in the program to go recruit on our behalf, but then there are influencers who aren't necessarily MSc graduates, but they are practitioners of our production. Like they do hauls, they open up boxes, like they open up packaging, and they talk about how great the packaging is before they show, whatever the Stanley Cup they just bought, or before they open their new MacBook, or whatever the case may be. That's an opportunity to say, how cool is it that someone took the time to ensure that it takes 2.3 seconds for that air to unlock for you to take the top off? Like, that's a really cool job. Ding, 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 MSE. Yeah. Then you got people who talk about all these things that are outside of the discipline, but are tangential to what we do. And it's not unlike, again, like Nike. Nike doesn't talk about where it sources its leather, or how comfortable the sneakers are, or how shock absorbent it is. Nike talks about what it means to be an athlete. And Nike talks about what it means to be an athlete in spaces where athletes are, or people who are trying to be athletes are. And they use the voice of athletes to talk about what it means to be an athlete as a way to symbolize this notion that all of us, every human body, is an athlete. The only thing keeping us from being our best version of ourselves as athletes is us. So Nike tells the world to just do it. That's how we think about MSC. Like, what are all the, what are we about? Like, if we are about that everything is made of materials, which makes a materials education everything, then we should go in the places where materials have the most cultural saliency. And you see it in sneakers, you see it in fashion, you see it in electronics. There are all these spaces. Now, these are extremely fertile territories in which we can extract information about who these people are, and we can talk to them in a way that signals that we understand them and provide them an option to help them realize these things they care about more tangibly than they have before.
Yeah, we see it in automobiles. We see it in,
That's right.
carbon fiber sailboats, and
That's right. These are all subcultures. These are
everywhere.
all subcultures. All subcultures that we could be a part of, and we can talk about things not like let me tell you about hexagonal clothes packed. We'll talk about like that way, but we can talk about it in ways that are of their language, and they go, "Oh wow, you get this." Wow, like we talk about how the colorways are constituted based on these things. You go, "Oh, dude, what do you know about colorways?" You didn't say the color of the sneaker; you said the colorways. So you understand the vernacular of the subculture, and therefore people feel like you're one of them.
So how does one go about looking at Reddit subcultures? You're just a lurker. You just get on and start searching and seeing what people say, and then you write down common themes of identity and of what influencers are talking about. Is that how you do it?
That's a good way to start. I would typically think about this with, I would say we want to talk about sneakerheads. Let's just say sneakers to start with, because it's easy. Say we want to think about how might material science as a discipline engage sneakerheads, which is a massive, massive population. So I would go to Reddit and put in sneakerheads. And what Reddit would give you is a list of subreddits that are affiliated with sneakers or sneakerheads. I'll just put sneakers, actually. Let's put sneakers. All the subreddits affiliated with sneakers. Then what I would do is I would go into those subreddits and I would just observe and translate. So you're looking like line for line, the conversations, and there are going to be many of them. And as a researcher would, you're taking notes. And this form of research is called grounded theory, where we're observing a thing and we keep looking, and we kind of go back to what we saw earlier to start putting things in boxes or in themes. here's some things that are happening. I'm seeing these things take place and start to bubble up to something far greater, some massive takeaway, some insight. And by observing them closely, we get a sense of what matters to them. We get a sense of the language that they use, the artifacts that they don, the behaviors that are normative, and even like some of the cultural production, like the music they listen to, the movies they watch, the television. These all become invitations or opportunities to engage them. So if we were to say, all right, we're going after sneakerheads, we know who they are, we know what they care about, we know their social facts, we know what it means to be a part of the subculture. And Steve, you go, we're going to make some videos talking to sneakerheads, right? And you go, all right, so what did we notice? We realized that of all the sneakers that exist, the Jordan 3 seem to be the holy grail, seem to be like the most coveted sneaker. Let's break down all the materials that go into a Jordan 3. So I'm just kind of riffing here. Like, what if we say, let's deconstruct a Jordan 3? Let's take it apart and talk about all the materials that go into it and all the processes necessary to make this shoe come together. How effing cool is that? So we break it down, we show it, and maybe we have like, we pick an influencer who's in the space, who has credibility to do the video, and we have like a material science engineer with them, maybe even a student, maybe the student who's at Nike, maybe, kind of with them, talk about like the science of it. And you do an entire series like that. Wow. Like that alone, really super cool. Like that starts to pique the interest of people who like, I know what MS&E was. I definitely know it did that. And that is really cool. It's far more emotive than the rational benefits of the functional job to be done that MS&E does. But it recreates the experience I had watching that NASA engineer put fire on the side of the space shuttle while the other side was cool. It's emotional.
You just set up the perfect course for us to teach together.
Let's do it. We
could have a team of people who are business students and pair them with people who are, material scientists and get them to do exactly what you just said.
Yes.
Showing the marketing students how cool marketing can be and showing the material scientists why it should be so exciting to do material science.
That's right.
If we did it with freshmen, what a great freshman class.
Super cool. It can be super cool. And this is for me, this is how I think about like where I sit in my career now, that I learned how to solve problems from you, my professor, and all the professors I had at the College of Engineering as an MSc student. So while I don't necessarily work in materials so much, it's the cognitive processes of reframing a problem and finding different solutions to solve said problem. I learned that as an engineer. I mean, I still very much think like this. Why I'm a strategist, because anytime I solve a problem, I go, okay, hold up. What are the variables? What are we solving for? Right? And then what are the best theory that we can use to help us arrive at some answer, some solution, some description of what we're seeing? I don't think I would have thought like that had I not been an engineer, had I not learned materials. And in fact, to make it even more incestuous, maybe it's not the best word, to make it even more apropos, is that my work as a marketer centers squarely on social networks. And when I think about social networks, I see carbon chain networks. Like that's what I see. Right. When I think about people coming together, I often use the analogy of like, these are like different atoms that are electron files, right? And they come together because they have a shared affinity for a thing. Yep. It's having this perspective, this Rosetta Stone to talk about things, to make something that is abstract, much more, dare I say, material or tangible, that I think is a really powerful thing. If someone would have told me that when I was going through the MSc program, I would have definitely thought about my experience in the program differently. But because I only saw it through through this myopia, I was like, well, I don't want to work in metallurgy. I don't want to work in ceramics, and like I don't think I want to go into packaging either. MSc isn't for me. As opposed to saying, hey, you're looking at this thing far too narrow. You're looking at it through a keyhole. But there's so much more opportunity here than I would have been a completely different student.
So let's use that as an opportunity to pivot to education for a few minutes
Yeah.
and talk about things we do in our classrooms, because yes, we need to get students, that's very important, but we also need to serve the students that we have and to do that as effectively as possible. And when I was at your talk on campus and then reading your book afterward, I was really struck by how you approach these problems in marketing and in business from a very psychological, very cognitive science point of view of what is happening inside people's minds, what is happening inside people's hearts, and how do their affective and cognitive experiences drive the choices they make, the actions they take. And I feel like a lot of instructors in the classroom don't approach their teaching from that point of view and with that framework.
Yeah.
And I am really hoping to hear an opinion or two from you about what's a good entry point for that. How can we take someone who's sort of a traditional professory type and say,
Sure.
what are a few core ideas from the business world that are going to make you a better teacher? And thinking about how your students think and how your students feel,
Yeah.
and not be so obsessed with the content. Like thermodynamics is there. It's fine. But
Yeah.
that's not the most important thing for getting your students to learn thermodynamics.
Yeah. So interesting. So from going from a engineering education to a business education, now being an educator in business, business is always, I found that engineering was very much focused on the conceptual, and then you had labs to take the conceptual to the applicable. However, on the business side, it's all practice driven. So the concepts are always in service of how you apply them, how you practice them. And I've actually found myself somewhere in the middle. Like I became a better practitioner as a marketer because of my self-directed approach to the behavioral sciences. The more I understood the concepts or the theories of behavioral science, the better practitioner I became. So as an educator, I always start with well, we can't know how till we know why. So let's actually focus on why things are the way they are. And I would deliver them in ways that meet people where they are, right? So if I talk about Emil Durkheim, I would follow it up with a Jay-Z quote, right? If I'm talking about an example of something with Cress, I would then follow it up with an example of like the Kendrick Lamar and Drake beef. I would always try to find things that are very colloquial so people can see themselves in it, so they can see themselves in the concepts, and then provide them with the skills they need to actually apply it. So my pedagogical sort of North Star is a gentleman named Jean Piaget, the child psychologist, who he says that we learn in a state of cognitive disequilibrium. That we think the world is one way, and then we break it, and then we allocate all of our cognitive energy to put it back together. And that's exactly how I teach. Like I come in the classroom saying, what do we know about brand? Everyone says brand is this, brand is that. I go, really? Actually, brand is this. And I'm doing everything I can to just break the schema that they have of brand. And they're like, what in the world is going on here? And now I'm helping them throughout the semester, or maybe even that one session, put the pieces back together. But I'm empowering them to do it. Like Jean Piaget would say that, we didn't learn, like no one taught us anything. That we learned because we allocated our cognitive energy to putting the pieces back together. Right? We just had very safe spaces. We had conducive spaces that made it easier for us to put the pieces back together, depending on how the professor taught or how the learning classroom or learning environment was curated. That's always my North Star. Break the schema, help them put it back together, and create opportunities for them to do that. Create safe spaces for them to explore the unknown so they can put the world back together again for themselves and ultimately apply it. Doing that over the course of 14 weeks is a challenge. 7 weeks if you're an MBA student, but that's always the North Star for me.
So I don't know if you know this, Marcus, but Tim has pretty much revolutionized our undergraduate lab experience.
Oh, I love it.
He teaches, so now we can actually pour liquid metal and cast it. And so Tim, all of our students learn how to design an alloy on the computer because we're trying to tap into the computational world for all the things you mentioned. And frankly, we feel students are better served if they learn computer science in our department than in the computer science department because there is such a oversubscription of students. Half of the engineering school is in computer science, one half.
Yeah.
And sadly, only maybe 20% of those people will actually get to do computer science. The rest of them are going to be commodity programmers and a horrible career.
Yeah.
But but computer science is completely rocking all of engineering with digital twins and all this stuff. And computational material science is sort of the future of our field.
Yeah.
And Tim brings it together for students just learning thermo. They use thermocalc and all these professional tools to design an alloy on the computer in a team. And then they go make it. And then they make dog bones. And then they go test it to see if they got what they thought they would get. And of course, they never do because it's hard to do. But they get that actual experience of making something using all of these tools.
Yeah.
And I think that's so cool. And after hearing you talk, I can see redesigning some aspects of our capstone design course to maybe let students have more agency to choose the kind of projects they want to do that resonate with their identity and their worldview. And I'm not sure we do that. And so I don't know. I've learned a lot today just listening to you.
I love that. I mean, the capstone project I do for my strategic brand management course for MBA students, I tell them to invent a brand that doesn't exist that they think should exist. What's the brand? What does it stand for? How does it see the world? What products does it create? How would you bring those products to market relative to the way the brand sees the world? So kind of walk through the entire process and allowing them to choose and saying, hey, take these ideas that you learned, these concepts that you learned, and apply it to the thing that matters most to you. When we do it that way, it feels more like our own. It feels, like you said, more like our identity, which is why I think this idea of fishing in ponds that aren't directly associated to MS&E, but definitely tangentially, they're in the peripheral, gives you more bodies to potentially convert, but also it gives more flexibility to what it means to work in the world of materials. And ultimately, that's what we want. That's really what we want.
Yeah, absolutely. Because our discipline will be more robust if we have a greater variety of perspectives, talents, skill sets, motivations to draw on as a community internally.
That's right.
And I would love to see more art students, more architecture students in here with the design project that Steve was talking about. The question that I pose to the students is, what's something you actually care about that you wish you had a better medal for? And they kind of get stuck for a second. They're like, I thought I was an engineer. What does that have to do with anything? It's like, no, you the person, you the human being. Do you like bicycles? Do you like spaceships? Like, what just sets you off and says, man, that's so cool, I want to work on it more? And that's what's supposed to start the conversation, is what's something that you value that you feel like you could make a, pun intended, material contribution to.
That's what makes for good marketing. It's not about consumers, these machines we messages and crap cash. This is about human beings, real life human beings. And we engage them based on what makes them human. Like, we are intersectional in our identity. Like, we're not just a professor. We're not just a musician. We're not just a marketer. We're all these things. And unfortunately, especially in the world of academia, we require people to sort of suspend all their other identity for the 90 minutes or 3 hours they're in the classroom with us, as if they're only this. And we wonder why they aren't as engaged as they could be, as opposed to saying, bring all that stuff in here. I always tell my students, I was like, listen, I study culture, so we're going to be talking about culture. So I want to know what you watched last night. I want to know what movie you went to. I want to know what you saw on TikTok. I want to know what you bought. I want to know those things. I want to know about the bad date you just had. Like, well, what went wrong? Why did it go wrong? Because your expectations was this, and that expectations for that person was that, and it was incongruent. Well, that's exactly what happens with marketing. We say something, and people go, I'm not buying that. There's an incongruence between what we want to be or what we want to say we're about and what people see us as. and people don't move as a result of it. And the better we find the alignment between how we see the world and the people that we're going after to see the world, the more likely we are to connect with them, just like the more likely we are to have a really successful date. And making those parallels, connecting those dots that seem disparate because we have historically couldn't be our full selves in the classroom, makes for, I think, a really engaging classroom experience and possibly even a better career outlet, because maybe they don't want to go into packaging, but they do want to make bikes, to your point, Tim, or maybe they do want to make, maybe they're really into to sound engineering. They actually really want to work in music studios. They're like, well, there's better way to get better resonance on microphones than what the Neumann or the Shure microphones provide. There's a better way to do this, and materials education helps us do that.
I have one more question I got to ask.
Okay.
And I'll let Steve wrap it up. I know we have a clock to look at, but I want to ask one hard question.
Okay.
Which is, as we're talking about the multifaceted nature of identity and about sociocultural norms for behaviors that we're sort of expected to engage in, we're saying that we want to attract more people into materials who do not maybe traditionally think of themselves as engineers or as participating communities that are seen as like engineering adjacent, like art, like music. And there's this really unfortunate broader cultural phenomenon that it is implicitly encouraged culturally, at least in this country, that if you're an artist, you don't like math. And engineering is math. And so how do we bridge that gap and disabuse people of that preconception that, oh, I love art, I'm not a math person, therefore I can't do engineering?
So that's a fair push. Well, I think I think about math as like the language of engineering as opposed to math is engineering. Much like accounting is the language of business. I do not like accounting. That is not my thing at all. But it's about, I have to understand the language of it to do the thing that I want to do. You know, I have to understand how P&Ls work. I have to understand how debits and credits work. I have to understand, how to look at a 10K. But that's not the work that I do on a day-to-day basis. I think that if we made accounting the barrier to entry into business, you won't get very many people doing all the cool things that are happening in business. I think if we make math the barrier to engineering as opposed to the language of engineering, we remove that barrier. Without degrading the integrity of what we do, if we remove that barrier, we open the door more broadly to folks.
I also think that that's somewhat of a myth. I think the very best artists have no problem with math.
Oh, I completely agree. I don't think it's true, but people often speak that way.
Yeah, it's the positioning of it.
You're right. There's sort of a culture out there that believes that, but the people who are really dedicated to art aren't like that. At least when I went to college, all my roommates were sculptors and painters. And they were some of the best scientists I ever knew. They were amazing.
Well, if we were talking about how do we get more people into engineering more broadly, then that would be a cultural orthodoxy that we would try to subvert, right? This is the idea of cultural branding, finding those tensions, those contradictions, those myths that aren't real, and say, how do we subvert them, right?
Yeah.
Like I think about musicians, to me, are some of the best mathematicians.
Oh, yeah.
Because they understand the numeric intervals between notes. Like, I mean, you heard Jacob Collier talk about harmonics. Like, this guy is unbelievable.
Circle of fifths.
The circle of fifths,
All
exactly.
mathematical.
And I mean, you take a record like Giant Steps from John Coltrane.
Right.
That is a mathematical feat, what he's doing, right?
Yep.
And it's just, those are just cultural counterpoints that the brand, the entity, the organization would push against, would subvert as a way to open the door to bring more people in. I think that's the opportunity for MSE as well. Materials matter, which makes material education matter.
So I want to do one takeaway from what you said, a very practical takeaway that maybe we can work with the teachers' camps and with our students who are going out and doing outreach, and what we bring to the tables at fairs like you went to and saw the thing, if we do our research with Reddit, we should identify things that there is a cultural identity out there, and then develop a demo or an activity that is squarely focused on that thing, and come up with, 5, 6 of these. And instead of talking about, eutectic metals and all that we care about, talk about how that might be applied to what these kids care about deeply. And if we pivoted like that, would that be putting your book to practice?
That's right. That's right. You talk about the things that matter to them in the language in which they speak as a way to demonstrate that you see them, you understand them, and in many ways you're one of them. And when they see that, they go, yo, this is actually, I never thought about it that way. Oh man, they feel this emotional connection to a thing. And they go, that's actually kind of cool. I might want to do that.
That's great. That's great. And offline, we should talk about starting a course. What a cool idea for a course with
I love this.
Marketing and material science.
I mean, if we did like sneakers one day, we do skating another day, you do biking another session, like these just become these sort of cultural hot spots in which people go, wow, I never thought about it that way. If you get people thinking like, I never thought about it that way, that's half the battle.
And that's so empowering for them, because they just realize they gained access to a whole new way of understanding the world that maybe they didn't know they were capable of.
Exactly. And then they start to pursue the thing so that they might be sort of the subculture. If someone goes, you major in MS&E, you go, oh, you didn't know? Oh, let me tell you why this thing is dope. And they're not doing it because they love MS&E so much. They're doing it because it is now their identity project. Once you're there, Tim, that's that multiplier. That's that network effect that everything that we end up hearing about, doing, watching, consuming, they don't come because we saw an ad. We do it because we heard it from people who are like us, who told us it's so dope. You should do this also.
Yeah. I think that would help build undergrads in marketing and in material science, because it's such a bizarre course that people will be attracted to it and go, what the hell is that? I want to see what that's like. And so, and then once we get them, we expose them to the power of marketing and the power of material science. And then they can choose which they want to do. And who knows, maybe we can even create a joint program somewhere down the line.
I love it. We call the course material consumption. Be super cool. I love it.
All right. Well, we're about out of time. So thank you so much, Marcus. I've learned so much today. And it's always fun talking to you. But wow, it's great to hear all of this. And so thank you very much.
I should be thanking you. Thank you so much for 20 plus years ago. And even to this day, I'm very, very grateful.
Well, we'll want to get some links to your website and links to your book that we'll put in the show notes. And, marketing, this is yet another whole thing that we talked a little bit in the beginning. Yeah. But, it's so interesting what you just said. It's not the ads. It's what people tell each other. That's the number one reason people would watch a podcast, listen to a podcast, watch a video, buy a product, whatever. And understanding that is a powerful thing.
Absolutely.
So thank you so much.
Pleasure's all mine.
All right. And thank you all who are listening. And we'll see you next time. See you later.